Hello everybody, I guess it's great to be here. I'm very grateful to Anouk and to Monique and of course to Barbara Cruz as well for asking me to get involved in this rather exciting week-long or days-long of presentations on the web. My name is Michael Thomson and I'm going to probably talk for about, well, I'm not sure, probably about 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. And I'm hoping that we're going to have quite an interactive session. I tuned into a few of the presentations this morning, which have been very interesting, and I've watched not all of them, but some of them, and I've found the content to be very interesting. And I guess I'm slightly different perhaps as a speaker because I operate as an independent consultant rather than as a representative of a specific organization. Although, of course, I have worked on behalf of and for organisations in the design space and particularly in the design policy space. So I guess a little bit of background might be helpful just to help you position or place the things that I'm going to talk about. By the way, as we're going along, if you want to fire some questions up onto the screen, I'll try and see if I can deal with them. And I actually have a set of my own slides. I've got shares in post-it notes. So my little presentation is on a set of pages. I think there's about 6 pages with a whole range of post-it notes. So what I would suggest was, if you want me, or Anouk, if you can arrange for me to have emails, I'm happy to scan these pages after we've talked, and they might act as a little mnemonic or a memory for people as to what I talked about. I also I think I've clicked the right button to record this presentation. So I guess one of the first things to say about myself is that I'm design trained. I trained in design in Belfast and in Germany some years ago. And after a period of work as a teacher and at the Design Council in London and in Belfast and in London, I then set up Design Connect in 1995. And I guess the work that I've done with Design Connect during that time is independent, design-led strategy thinking and facilitation. And that's for clients both of design companies, but also for clients who are in the client space themselves, organizations, and of course in policy. So design companies, it's small companies, it's medium-sized companies, it's large design companies. And of course we know that the European average size of a design company is between 1 and 9 people. And that's from statistics done in 2004. So maybe that's changed a bit. It might actually be a little bit smaller now. And I've worked in the areas of brand, identity, digital design, and product design. So, for example, for companies like City ID in Bristol, where they do a lot of wayfinding strategies for city centres. Most recently, they've been appointed to do the wayfinding in New York, which is an amazing achievement, I have to say. I'm very excited for them. In the past, I've worked with Meta Design, Icon Media Lab, Future Brand on identity and brand strategy, business development, with Vidal Glösner in Luxembourg, with Rudd Studio here in London at the moment, fantastic company doing broadcast design, Cartley Zavine and so on. And I'm telling you this because I think if you're going to talk about design policy to policymakers, I think it's very important to have an understanding of what's happening in design practice. And it's equally important to understand what's happening client side. So I've worked with companies like Tupperware in the States on innovation strategy, the Chorus in the UK on communication strategy, that's big steel makers, Channel 4, the broadcaster here, working on digital development of a digital strategy for their .com. And that's working with a whole range of stakeholders in their design delivery process, design creation process over the period of about a year. Samsung C&T in Korea, and that's on design management projects, looking at the development of advanced design management strategies internally for their interior design team. With Dyson, communication strategy, and even currently with a Premier League football team here in the UK. And I've also worked with Bath City Council and Bristol City Council to help cities internally develop strategies and programs for building a greater sensitivity and sensibility to the role of design in the public realm. and that's particularly exciting work for me, that I find particularly inspiring. What's interesting about design facilitation work, or design-led facilitation work, is that you can also apply this into arenas which are not so design focused, or not so immediately design focused. So for example, I've worked with political parties, and I've even worked with a police force, helping them internally think through some of their communication strategies. So bringing design-based approaches, visualization, creative thinking, group thinking, independent individual thinking, accommodating different points of view, taking a holistic approach, all of these things can actually help organizations, teams and people to deliver better thinking and more powerful responses to the challenges that they're facing at the present time. The third strand of my work there tends to be in the policy area, and I've had the chance to work quite internationally here as well, in the UK, in Ireland on an all-Ireland design policy through the Technology Centre in Sligo, with the EU Commission, which I'm going to talk about shortly through my work with BEDA, with European Design Associations, which I'll also talk a little bit about in a few moments. In Iceland, and I guess a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, in Qatar, in Doha, for Her Highness Sheikh Moza. And what was interesting about that project in doing the preliminary thinking and the creation and development of the International Design Zone was that her drive was, unlike so many other design policies and design strategies, was not to do with increased competitiveness, at least not at the first instance. What she was interested in was prosperity of mind and behaviour. And that for me was very intriguing, because that started to bring in a societal agenda to the design strategy. How can a nation think about itself for the future, and how can design help to build identity and confidence for a nation to face the future? So that was very interesting work. Just on the side, I also have spent time, again, thinking about the international dimension. I sat on the ICSID board, that's the International Council of Societies of Industrial Design, from 2001 to 2005. And then I've been involved with BEDA for some 10 years or more, most recently as its president from 2007 to 2009. So I think today what I'd like to talk about is a little bit about the design policy journey. I'd like to talk about design practice and how that's changing a little bit. And then I'd like to talk about design learning for all, which is something I would like to introduce to you at the end of my talk. So as I go along, please feel free to ask any questions. Anouk, if you could keep me on time, if I find I've been completely wrong in my estimation of time and I need to have a bell rung or a buzzer pressed to shorten the length of the conversation, the presentation, then please do that for me. And of course, I think what's really important is that we get a chance to have some questions from you as well. So thank you for listening. I hope it's interesting so far, and let's see where we go from here. So the design policy journey. I think, well, first of all, I want to say congratulations on the launch of the Creative Industries Alliance this morning, yesterday and this morning. I think it's a fantastic opportunity for the creative industries in Europe, and I think that design should and will play a significant role in that process as that programme rolls out. I also want to say congratulations to the EU design project teams who have been successful in gaining EU funding from the Commission for the design-based projects. And I think underlying that is also a very strong congratulation to the European Commission itself. Now, very often we think of the policymakers as grey-suited, yes, we often think of them as men rather than women, grey-suited people in a back room somewhere. And actually that has not been my experience at all over the past 10 years. These are dynamic, amazing people with a very strong and powerful commitment to the role of society in the world, to the European agenda, and to the opportunity to create and promote and support innovation in companies and organisations and governments across Europe. I remember at a conference, an APCI conference in Paris, 2005, 2006, asking the question from the floor, did Europe need a design policy? And the answer at that point was, well, why? Not really. It doesn't really need one, does it? I mean, there's not really a need for that. And I think I have to acknowledge the role of many people in actually changing that mindset, in moving the mindset from a lack of awareness of design at the European level in the European Commission to a better level. There's still a way to go. We're still on a journey, but I think a lot of people have had a lot of opportunity to create change in that space. And I have to acknowledge the role of BETA. 42 association and organisational members in Europe. I've been a board member, vice president and president. Amazing past presidents, Severin Filek from Austria, Stephen Hitchens from the UK, Francisco Carrera from Spain, Massimo Pittis from Italy, myself, Jan Stavik from Norway, and now Deborah Dawson from the UK, who's going to be succeeded by Isabel Roche from the Barcelona Design Centre next year, well, from March actually. And of course to many board members as well. And I remember back in 2000 or thereabouts, Severin Filek and I, he was president at that time, Severin Filek and I decided that it would be helpful if BETA could actually start really talking in earnest to the European Commission. And we invented the communication series, the BETA communication series, which you can find reports from on the BETA website, which is beda.org, so beta.org. And for example, even back then, in 2001 this was, at that point we were trying to bring together people from the different directorates general to talk about design, to raise this word so that you could start to try and share language or build language. And I remember one of the reports is design as a key intangible, delivering value to the bottom line. So even back then we were trying to find opportunities to try and bring people together and for us to learn together and to build and share language. And over those period of years, I remember that led then in 2007, so already nearly 5 years ago, to the chance through one of our fantastic board members, Enrique Cayetz in Portugal. Hello Enrique, if you're here with us. But Enrique had the opportunity, being in Portugal, to find a chance for us to meet with President Barroso. And this was back in October 2007. And together with the board, we sat down and we wrote a manifesto. And here is the manifesto. So it's quite hard to use this camera. Here we are. No. Where is it? Just a second. I'm having to do my reverse thing. And there's a delay on the camera. So this was the BETA manifesto. And it was actually, if I can show you, it was entitled, I'm just useless at this. If I can show you, it was entitled, I'll just read it. It was entitled Design Europe 2010, Building the European Design Dimension Within Europe's Competitiveness and Innovation Strategies in Support of the Lisbon Agenda, which of course was concluding in 2010. So Design Europe was trying to tell President Barroso that Europe must be competitive and that the demands of the economic environment were changing rapidly and continuously, as they continue to do. We asked for, we were raising the issue that China aims to become an innovation society and is closing the creativity gap. That South Korea was implementing at that time its third 5-year plan for design, launched by the president of the country. And India's Union Cabinet had passed the Indian National Design Policy that year in February. And then we were saying that there is no clear policy for design at the European level. In the arena of design promotion and development, the level of investment across member states is inconsistent and remains, in absolute terms, insignificant and inadequate to the challenges that we are going to face in a globalizing world. So we were being quite strong in our language at that point. The European design industry, if measured by size alone, is very small and fragmented, and yet the impact of design for improving competitiveness, business performance, and generating wealth is well documented. In addition, it is a unique and valuable part of the heritage of European cultures. So Europe must act coherently at the European level to maintain, develop, and increase Europe's unique design power. So we were asking for Mr. Barroso's personal support to help us with 3 things. In creating a mechanism to build Europe's design competence for the 21st century, and within that mechanism then to create evidence, a consistent and comparable design evidence base for design activity in the European economy, incorporating the development of indicators for measuring the relevant intangibles, and leading to modest but significant modifications to existing innovation surveys. And so we've achieved this already. We also asked for investment in terms of a mapping review, and we asked for an opportunity to have dialogue to create policy advice as a permanent representation or a permanent discussion with the European Commission. And I think that leads me then, and we can see now, 4 or 5 years later, that these larger objectives are already being achieved. And I think it's worth talking about the role of the European Commission. This is good. I'm starting to get some questions, and I'll try and come to those. So I think if the role of the European Commission, this meant that the Commission actually took action following our meeting with Mr. Barroso. Oh, I was going to show you a slide of that. So here we are talking to Mr. Barroso, and that's Henrique in the middle there. Let's see if we can get Henrique. So sorry, that's me rather than Mr. Barroso. There we are, there's Mr. Barroso. And in fact, there's Isabel, who was talking at the launch this morning. So there we are. So there we are, talking on Mr. Barroso's Mr. Barroso's veranda in his place in Lisbon. And following that meeting, we were told we would get 20 minutes, and he gave us over an hour. And at that time, he was talking about the need for design as a strategy for innovation, which is exactly where we had positioned it. Not as design for design's sake, but design as a strategy to support innovation in Europe. And he asked us to then go and see his Vice President, Gunther Verheugen, which I did with Jan Stavik, who was my Vice President for that time. And from that meeting, Mr. Verheugen then initiated a whole lot of activity from the Commission side. There was research into the INNO program, and a mini study was created, which was a significant piece of work. Maastricht University was commissioned to do some work on creativity. There were significant workshops in Marseille run by the Innovation Policy Unit, headed up by Peter Drill at that time. And there were internal ongoing intergroup workshops inside the Commission where the directorates could talk to each other around this issue of design as a part of, or as an element of the Commission's work, working towards developing the replacement for the Lisbon Agenda, which of course is the Europe 2020 programme. And all of that led in April 2009 to the staff working document. And if I can come to Monique's question earlier, she asked how come it is so unique, the European design. I think what we were trying to say was that Europe's heritage in design is very strong. That competitor nations don't have the design history in terms of their education systems and their professional practice systems that we maybe have in Europe. But that is not to say that they're not able to catch up. And I think that's where the competitive element comes in. So if we look to China, for example, their design competence is growing. Their creativity competence is growing as well. And that is something that we're going to be living with now for the foreseeable future, well, for the future. In that China and its design sector is becoming more and more able to compete at a global level. I think there's still a way to go in terms of their ability to voice opportunities for products and services and environments around strategic approaches to that. But in terms of creativity and delivery, I think they're second to none, and they will be catching up with us very hard. So we were saying that European design is unique in the sense that it is something that has been built up over a period of 100 years, and it's something that we should try to protect and to support and develop. So back in April 2009, the staff working document was then produced. Yes, exactly, Monique. Monique is saying this is an advantage. So yes, I think it is, and it's an advantage that we need to protect. So that led almost 3 years to the day to the publication of the Innovation Union in October 2010, and for the first time we had design explicitly mentioned. Not mentioned very often, but it's there. It's in the policy documentation that has been developed over a period of many months with many internal players within the Commission and across the member states, for example the Council of Ministers. So to have achieved, with the support of the European Commission in the Innovation Policy Unit, which was formerly Charlotte Arwidi, and currently the person holding the flag is Christine Simon, and I salute them for their work internally. We actually have now this fantastic position of having the European Design Leadership Board, the European Design Leadership Initiative, the €3 million spend on the design programme, looking at the various project areas that they're looking at, and I think we have achieved a great deal. So what do we learn from this? I think one of the first things is that the Commission responded well, and it responded fast. I think to move from recognition to policy in a period of 3 years is a fantastic achievement for all of us. And I think in going through that process, what I have learned is that it is so necessary in that space to allow for different points of view to be expressed, for the support and the development and sharing of common language. And that means giving people time to explore language and to test the meanings of language, to try and find opportunities where they can identify common ground. And that means in turn that you need to be open to this journey of changed perceptions, and that takes time. And of course there's this lovely story that the mind once expanded doesn't shrink back to the same size, and I think that's true for all of us. And that perception journey has been, I think, from a sort of a wider perception of this design thing being about some form of art activity, through to an understanding of the object and all that means around innovation strategy, through to systems, from systems to strategy, and then from strategy to embedded behaviour. So in fact I've created a little ladder, which I thought you might like to see. I don't know if you can see that well enough. So with art at the bottom, moving through to the object, up to systems, which include services, service design, moving towards design as strategy, and then up to design and innovation as embedded behaviour. And I think the notion of embedded behaviour is something that takes us to the learning cycle. And the learning cycle is very interesting. This is one version. I can't remember who authored this, but here we are. I have it anyway to show you. So, can you see this? So, if you look at, I think it's on the screen on your left hand side, you will see unconscious incompetence. And that means that there's something that you're not even aware you're incompetent at. If you then follow the arrow up, you've got conscious incompetence, which means that you've suddenly become aware that there's something you're not very good at. That cycles through to conscious competence, where you've actually gained the competence, and then it moves through to unconscious competence, which is where actually it becomes embedded behaviour, like language, like learning a language, like learning to play the clarinet. So I think in the learning cycle, it's almost as if we have taken policymakers from an unconscious incompetence or lack of awareness of design as strategy, as design as a contribution to societal growth and identity, through that conscious incompetence to some form of conscious competence at the moment, where they're starting to build programs, they're creating support, and developing opportunities for funding for design. And that then leads through, we hope over time, then to this opportunity for design to be like an unconscious competence for Europe. So I thought it would be worth saying a few words about the impact on the EU. I mean, if anyone has any questions at the moment, I'm very happy to try and field these on the screen. So if you have a question, please feel free to fire it up. It would be nice to see them. So I think the impact on the EU of this policy journey, design policy journey, is the building and embedding of shared language, shared understanding of what design might mean for our industries, for our governments and for society. And I think the fact that the Commission has taken the lead to develop innovation strategies which include design has a spillover effect. And that spillover effect actually means that at the member state level, member state governments think, well, if the European Commission think this is important, is this not something we should be looking at as well? And I think that has been helpful on a number of situations. So for example, if you look at the NACE codes, which are the underlying codes that from a statistician's point of view, create knowledge about economic activity within an economy. We know that through Beta's work we've changed the NACE code, I think it's 714, so that it includes design more accurately, so that design knowledge will actually be coming up into the economic research field for the various economies across Europe, economies that have adopted it so far. So those economies adopting the NACE code and actually learning about the role of design in their economy through that one single instrument, for example, means that the spillover effect from the Commission will over time have a beneficial effect across all 27 member states, soon to be 28, 27 member states across Europe. So in a way, this design policy discussion has raised the status of design within policy, and that in turn has allowed us to focus resources through and for design, whilst at the same time attracting a new set of partners. This spillover effect also has an impact on SMEs and indeed, as a result, on design companies, on the design sector of Europe, where I think there is a need continually for increased competitiveness and effectiveness of design consultancy. And we should have a framework wherein within policy, not only are we looking after the SMEs and the other economic activity within Europe, but we also say, yes, there is a sector that is the design sector within the creative industries that also needs to raise its game, that also needs to understand good practice, that also from within the member states needs to build opportunities to internationalize their services to actually improve the chances of their businesses growing. And of course we also need clients who are commissioning design and using design who are able to share good practice and to understand what good practice is, which of course then takes us into the field of design management. So thinking about the impact on the EU, what do we learn from this? Policies impact widely, even if not directly. Very often the design company which is working at this level maybe doesn't understand what's happening at the policy level, and it's hard for them to see what happens in the gap. But I think nevertheless the design policies do have a knock-on effect, and we need to sustain our economic activity through design and for design. And that creativity in design raises competitiveness, we know this, and we need to understand how best to promote design and innovation behaviour across Europe. And that takes me to the thing about not only in clients and in design companies, but also in governments as well. So, if, for example, I'm thinking of Marco Steinberg's work with the Helsinki Design Lab in Sitra in Finland, in Helsinki, and to the best of my knowledge they've already started a design placement program in government departments where they are positioning designers into governments. So I see a question. Excellent, thank you for the question. How do those design policies reflect in concrete support programs, i.e. startup financing, and where and so on? So that's this issue about the gap. It's one thing to have a policy, but then what about the support? And I think the innovation support is coming through the Innovation Support Unit inside the Commission, which is responsible for the Creative Industries Alliance. So the Creative Industries Alliance is €7.5 million of funding for the creative industries that did not exist before. And that, and on the design side, then it's supported €3 million for programs which have yet to start. They haven't started yet; they've just been announced. Well, they're going to support design management. They're going to support the better understanding of measurement of design, the better understanding of city labs, and so on. So those knock-on effects at the European level should actually help to create support mechanisms at the regional and national level. And I think the C project, Gavin Kaywood and his group are looking at developing support mechanisms that are much more directly connected to the design marketplace. So I think what else do we learn from this is that having opportunities to take design into government through mentoring programs, as is happening in Helsinki at the moment. I mean, why can't we envisage that happening at the European level, either within the Commission or even at the member state level as well? Because we need design-minded policymakers with a shared language and perception, or a framework of reference for design that is people-centered. It's people-centered, evidence-based policymaking with a design-led function. this then leads me to talk a little bit about design practice. Last month in Montreal, I had the chance to facilitate both the ICSID board, that's the Council of Societies of Industrial Design, and indeed the 3 boards of the world organisations in a meeting of the IDA, the International Design Alliance. And that was really interesting because, of course, the 3 world organisations, ICSID, IFI and EcoGrada, represent 3 discipline areas or containers for design disciplines at the world level. So we've got product and industrial design, we've got visual communications, digital strategy, digital media, and we also have interior architecture. And what was fantastic about those meetings was the opportunity or the ability of these people to work together. And again, I have a nice photograph after the end of the workshop where everybody was smiling and working together quite happily, generating ideas. Generating ideas for the development of design and the IDA, looking to the development of the the IDA Design Congress, not only in Istanbul in October this year, but also looking ahead to the future. And I think that was very interesting because I think cross-disciplinarity, as we know, is increasing, but so is the focus on specialization. And the design process itself within the consulting community is handling more and more complexity from the client side. And my experience of that is that not only do design companies have to become much better at what they do at the heart of their skill base in terms of the design delivery and design creation, but also in the more process-oriented soft skills around facilitation, people insight, management and change management processes, so that they're actually finding opportunities to take design up the value chain within that overall economic process, so that the products that are coming out, or the services, or the environments, or the policies or strategies are actually well connected to the overall goals of the organisation. And within that, of course, we have a greater sensibility of social and sustainability needs, and of the need for companies to be very focused not just on the design project, but actually on the corporate objectives for the clients that sit behind the design project. And I know, for example, if I take an example of one of my companies that are client companies, Tangerine, here in London, they've got an office in London and Seoul, they work in the industrial design space, they developed the new business class seating for British Airways, and British Airways invested many millions of pounds in the development of a new business class back in 2000. Tangerine developed an innovative yin-yang seating for that process and redefined the perception of what the business class could mean for passengers in that space. And that the return on investment on the design investment was significant, it was fast, and was achieved in less than 12 months. That was a repeatable process because British Airways came back to Tangerine and said, look, we'd like you to do the upgrade of the business class in 2006, and have in fact asked British Airways, working with 4 people, to then work on the launch of the development of the first class experience, which was launched in February of this year, February 2011. So I think that opportunity for design companies to create value for their clients is increased, where the design function is actually connected very strongly to the business objectives of the client and to those corporate objectives. So I think for design practice in Europe, we need in design companies a greater culture of CPD, the continuing professional development. We need ongoing increase in the levels of creativity and ingenuity. How do we do that? That's an ongoing question. We need more collaborations and partnerships within the sector and outside of the sector, so that actually design companies can punch above their weight in terms of achieving value for their clients. And we need a better understanding within the industry of what the exit strategies are. What are the exit strategies? What is this business sector? What is the business model? How can we improve the business model? How can we grow and sustain a better stream of design talent into those companies so that we can really help clients grow their design competence? Talking of clients, for the design buyers, I think we need an EU-wide platform for design users to share best practice. and that needs to be complemented by perhaps a private public sector government mentoring scheme, which I've touched on earlier. And why is there no professional association for design buyers? Maybe there is one. If there is, please tell me, but I don't know of it. That would help the development of opportunities to share best practice and to deliver better value in that design client relationship. Okay, I think we're about 25 minutes in. About 30 minutes in. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about design learning for all, and then I'm going to talk a little bit, some concluding comments, and then we can see if we get to some questions, because I would like to engage with some questions at the end. So, design learning for all. Well, I think design education is something that we could probably talk about for a lot longer than 20 minutes, but I just wanted to introduce an idea to you. I think it's true that we can learn about design, and we can learn how to do design, and in fact we can learn to become designers. But I believe that design as a process is also a learning method or a learning style of its own, and I believe all our children and young people should be or could be exposed from an early age to design thinking ways and behaviours. Not to become designers, although we would get that, and not to be future design managers or directors in companies, although we would get that as well, and not even to be business people sensitive to design, although that too would be achieved, but rather to have individuals who are more holistic, creative, resourceful, more widely skilled, self-aware, and people-centered in how they perceive the world and how they navigate around it and how they contribute to it. So I think there's something here about a wider agenda of design learning for all, and I think that is a chance to make accessible design-minded thinking and behaviour to everyone, to make it universal, so that we're used to the idea of design for all, to try and universalize design-based principles for everyone. Why can we not also apply that in the learning sphere, so that design learning for all becomes something that is remarkable in itself and not just seen as a means to an end? And I see that we're getting comments about design as a lifestyle, and I think design contributes to lifestyle. I think our inner imaginal world can be expanded beyond the world of literature and number, of mathematics and language, and that this design ability to engage with the world in a more holistic three-dimensional sense, the design decisions in the world around us, is something that actually enriches young people's lives, enriches all our lives. And I think Anouk is asking about, talking about learning design, is it more nature or nurture? Well, that's a, that's a rather classic question. And of course I think we're beginning to understand that is probably a bit of both. But I think what we don't have in our schools, even within the wider teaching force across Europe, is teachers across all of the subject areas who have access to design as a method of being, as thinking, learning, communicating, creating ideas. So I think that is something that we need to work on further. And I see that Raphael, hello Raphael, is interested in the mentoring question. And I think that mentoring idea is something that's very powerful and not often used. I know that the Design Business Association, the DBA in the UK here, that's the professional body for trade association for designers, has just launched a mentoring scheme for designers in companies where they introduce younger design companies to the grey hairs of the older designers and older design companies. And that's been very, very powerful because those older designers acting as mentors can really help the younger, less experienced companies take steps forward in a way that brings to their actions a sense of wisdom that maybe they might not have had they not gone through the mentoring process. So I think in concluding the words that I want to talk, or the things that I want to say today, I guess I've talked about the design policy journey in Europe. I think on that I want to say this is an exciting journey and we're only at the start of it, which is very exciting for me, and I know that a lot of people from many different areas will be engaged as we move forward. that design practice is changing, as is client practice in design, and we need that sensibility in to grow and increase and become shared good practice. In the same way that we need design practice and sensibility in governments and in government policy makers. And that is happening to a certain degree, but obviously there's room for more. And finally, providing universal access to design-mindedness for all of our people as a unique and complementary form of learning in itself is something that's very powerful. So I suppose the underlying story today for my talk has been about the journey that we're on. And we're all on a learning journey. Design is on a journey itself, and that's a learning journey, and it's an exciting time for Europe, and an exciting time for all of us to be engaged in this amazing creative field. So let us all contribute to work towards a Design Europe, and the fact that Europe will have a significant and continuing role to play in the global economy and in global societies as well, facing the, I think, huge complex challenges that we face in the coming decades. I think we need populations that actually have access to the tools and strategies that design can bring. I think that's all that I'd prepared to say today. I hope it has made some sense or been of interest, and I'm very happy to see if there are any questions. So Anouk, I don't know, do you need to moderate questions, or do I just sit and wait to see if any emerge on the screen here? Let's see if we've got an opportunity to have a little bit of interaction. So let's see if anyone has a question. I wonder who we have listening. Are there any designers with us? Questions about design? Policymakers? Let's see. Hi there. Let's see. We've got I think probably about 10 people listening in. Lolik, Zubu, Debster1, here we are, some more. Any questions? No questions. Raphael, were you happy with the response on mentoring? Do you want to say any more about that? Come on, people. Yes, Raphael, have you another question? Design startups. Another question about startups and cities. Did I see in a blog recently, I'm trying to remember the name, whereby there's a little society in America, a web-based society in America has started up. Sorry, I should say Rockbear is asking which cities have been most successful helping design startups, and Raphael's got his thinking cap on at the moment. But and I saw in the States they actually have a platform for design startups, which are actually startup companies, manufacturing companies, service sector companies. So in other words, what they're trying to do in America is create an opportunity for people who have run and set up design companies to then set up other non-design companies that are design-minded. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it. You'll have to Google it. But I think it might be worth looking at. I think there are a number of cities which, through their programs, regeneration programs, try to support startups, perhaps as an economic activity within the city or the region. I'm thinking of, for example, Torino through the World Design Capital project, whereby they had opportunities for design startups to be supported through their programs, as I remember. The same happened in Korea as well with the World Design Capital project in Korea. But I'm not sure there is actually a general program at the European level to support design startups. Certainly startups, cross-sectoral, in other words, a non-sectoral focus. And I guess that in terms of successfully setting up a design startup in your city, I don't know which city you're in, you might have to look into the more general economic support programs of the city. Can I ask which city it is, Roper? Let's see. No, I don't see any. Just looking to see if I can see which city you're on. I don't see any information on you, Roper. So I don't know. Have you a city in mind, particularly? No, nothing further on cities. Okay. You're in Ljubljana. Thanks, Roper. That's good of you to say that. I know Ljubljana because Slovenia is a member of BEDA, so we've had some board meetings out in Ljubljana, and in fact had visits to local companies, I think in the sports sector, that were using design in quite interesting ways. So I think one city you might want to look at is obviously, I think, Barcelona, where they have some programs to try and help attract young entrepreneurial companies into the city. Again, it's not necessarily specifically a design company, but I know that they would be interested in trying to attract talent and creative people into the city to make the city richer and to enrich the culture of the city and its economy. I have another question from Monique, which is, what is the best way to educate clients in getting better design management practices? I think that is, again, that's quite a deep conversation, quite a long conversation. And I certainly know through working on a variety of tender bids and procurement processes that clients themselves are on a learning cycle as well in terms of their ability to use design and the level of sophistication that they're able to use design. So, of course, we have everything from the beauty parade, where they say, could we have 10 design companies to submit work which they don't pay for? And they say, oh, we like number 7, and they take number 7. That's a very unsophisticated way to buy design. And it's not a way that helps the company or the design companies. And I think, on the other hand, we do have a lot of companies that are becoming more design aware, and they understand the relationship between good procurement policy and better design results. I can think of a number of clients. I don't think I should name them, but I can think of a number of clients in the area where that ability to purchase design is really quite sophisticated. That's not to say it's easy. I think many clients are coming to design particularly for the first time who don't understand how to buy design, and they need guidance and support from organisations either at the national or the regional level, or indeed at the European level. I see Edgar is saying that the Dutch government have cut a lot of money on art and design. How can we change that at the EU level? Well, I guess there's no silver bullets here. I think the work with the Creative Industries Alliance, the work where we're talking internally, creating programs with these officials, trying to help sensitize them to the specificities of the problems that they're facing, is something that can help over time, but I don't think there are any quick fixes. In a period of recession, there are issues like design that are more easily cut than others, and I think this is ironic because if, for example, you take the example of Virgin Airways, at the time of the last recession in the early 1990s, when everybody was cutting back on design, they were actually investing more in design. And that allowed them then, as the cycle started to cycle up, their ability to deal with design when the curve started to come up was far ahead of their competitors. And it seems a shame that governments are cutting funding for art and design when at the same time they're asking for more creativity and innovation. That is ironic. Any other questions? Thank you for the ones so far. I'm very encouraged that there have been questions. That's great. It's a very strange sensation to be talking to people and not hearing any voices coming back. So if you have any questions, that would be very good. or comments or observations? Oh yes, here's a question. Does Eastern Europe play a special role in Europe's design future? And I think the answer most definitely is yes. If we look to Central and Eastern Europe, we have astonishing levels of talent and creativity, albeit it's grown at a slightly different way and at a different rate than has been possible in more industrialized aspects, parts of Europe. But if I look to the glass industries and so on in the Czech Republic, if I look to the craft-based industries in other parts of Eastern Europe, or even, for example, in Poland, where there are also big markets, then I think that future is going to be significant. And I think the voice that they bring is also a very humanistic voice. It's a very craft-oriented voice, sensitive to materials, sensitive to the tactile qualities of products, and I suppose metaphorically to the tactile qualities of services as well, by inference. Then I think Eastern Europe does have a role to play. And I know that for my experience has been for Eastern European countries that are developing opportunities for their younger people to participate in design, that perhaps for the past generation or two generations it's been more difficult, but I think with the social change that's occurring, social reform that's occurring, that the opportunities for young people to create companies in Eastern Europe that even have an international outlook are increased, and I think that's exciting for the future. I'm not saying it's easy, but I think that opportunities exist there. Have you a comment on that, Raphael? Is that why you're asking that question? Do you think that, or am I not representing the situation well? What do you think? Ah, good. Yes, you're agreeing with that position. I think sometimes we talk a lot about, in the West, we talk about China and we talk about emerging economies and developing economies. And actually, don't misunderstand what I'm saying, but in the sense that there is a large marketplace and there is a growing and emerging young culture with creative skills and design skills and the technology and access to the technology to do it. I think Western Europe actually has a China on its Eastern European border where there's huge potential. Look at Turkey, for example. It's a huge market. And of course, looking forward to going to the International Design Congress in Istanbul later this year to learn more about the growth of design in Turkey as an economy as well. Okay, any other questions? I think we've probably about 5 minutes left. And I just wonder, is there anything else? Anybody got something they're burning to say that they just haven't had a chance to say? It doesn't seem to fit in at all. It's something that's different. It's something that might give us another 3 minutes of direction to talk around. Let's see if anything comes forward. It's nice to see so many people on the list. Okay. Well, look, maybe we're coming to a close now. So, I would like to thank Anouk and Monique for all their support. Oh, here we have a question. Is print dead? There we are. There's a good one for 3 minutes. Is print dead? Let's see. Let's talk about that for a second, because actually I was at a conference in Singapore, and I can't remember his name. He's one of the gurus for digital imaging in Asia. He's an American guy. He's Chinese American, and he does a lot of the digital animation work for the movie industry. And he stood up and he said that the still image is dead. Not that print was dead, but that the still image was dead. That in fact all our lives are going to be communicated through moving image, and here we are on video at the moment. So I think, is print dead? No, I don't think print is dead. I think print is changing. I think our ability to interact with written language and how we do that is changing through a range of devices, through a range of platforms. But I think, and I hope, that print will continue to survive despite the developments, which are really enormously amazing developments of the technologies around Kindle and so on. But I think that print brings with it a typology, a sensibility, an opportunity to engage in a physical sense that some of these other forms of language communication don't. And I hope that print will continue to survive. Maybe not in quite the same way that we have seen it, but I think it will survive. Which means that there's still a role for printers, for typographers, and for actually those of us who work in this space. So thank you for that question, Raphael. Okay, well folks, I've got to close it now. We're just coming up to 3 o'clock. So thank you very much for listening. It's been a pleasure to have the chance to talk like this. What a fantastic opportunity just to set out some of my thoughts there, and I hope it's been interesting for you, and who knows, maybe our paths will cross at some point in the future. Don't forget, I don't know how it happens, but if you want to send emails to me, michael@designconnect.co.uk, so that's michael@designconnect.co.uk, then I can scan these little notes that I had, and I'd be happy to send them through to you in a PDF. So folks, thank you very much indeed. Bon voyage, and thank you very much. Bye bye for now.